The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, April 21st. I hope everybody's having a good beginning of the week. Don't look at your portfolio. Just don't do it. Why ruin your week? Nothing you can do about it. It's already happened. You've already lost a lot of money. Just don't look. It's not worth it. All right, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about markets and how they're behaving today, maybe a little bit about why, although that ain't no mystery. Everybody knows why. Let's see, we are going to, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Fed, which is part of the reason why the markets are reacting the way they are. We'll talk about the trade war, another reason. We'll talk about Hegseth, the unqualified Secretary of Defense. So we'll talk about him and God, how he got into this position. Hegseth. We'll talk about free speech. Just one instance of the Trump administration, violating free speech. We'll talk about that. Tourism. Tourism falling off a cliff. And I'll give you an example of why. Why would anybody want to come to this country now? We'll take an example from Hawaii. And then we'll talk about the overarching, like, what's going on here? What unifies all of this across Trump's behavior? So we'll talk about control and the need to control. And then finally, we'll talk about a good Catholic. Somebody asked me about the Pope. Our good Catholic Candace Owens, and what is she up to? I view Candace now, basically, the Candace corner of the Yaron Brook Show, as comic relief. Comic relief, right? Can't take anything she says seriously. And it is, some of it is pretty funny. Now, I do know the Pope died. And I do know that some people care. I don't. What am I going to say about it? He was a leftist Pope, but that doesn't make any difference to me. I mean, I think I'd prefer a leftist Pope than a rightist Pope. And they're going to go into conclave and they're going to do their thing to figure out who the next Pope will be. And I still won't care. Because while it might be relevant to the Catholics in the world, and there are a lot of them, it's not relevant to me, and it's not relevant to geopolitics, really, and it's not relevant to the economy, and it's not relevant to national security, and it's not relevant to the Middle East. It really isn't relevant to anything important. So other than what I just said about the Pope, I'm probably not going to say much about the Pope unless you ask me. If you ask me, I'm happy to talk about it. Put a dollar sign. I mean, one of the really, I'm just going to say this, what the hell, right? You got me going on the Pope. One of the sickest phenomena in the world is really, I mean, this is despicable and horrific, is that a religious sect, a religious order, religious whatever you want to call the Catholic Church, has been shown to be committing the most horrific, horrible crimes towards children, and then covering them up and defending the criminals. And, people still convert to Catholicism, and they still join the church, and they still go to church, and they still revere their minister, and they still revere these popes, and they still revere these cardinals. Who knows what percentage of these cardinals are child molesters? I don't get this. I don't get it. This should have killed the Catholic Church. It should have killed the Catholic Church. The child molestation scandals of the last 50 years literally killed it. And it seems like to have reinvigorated it. Catholicism is growing in influence, and certainly in intellectual influence. So you know, and as far as I know, this Pope did not do that much, in spite of being so-called the leftist, did very little to bring justice to the victims or to persecute the perpetrators. So I have no sympathy to anything that happens in this church. I don't understand it. Don't know why it exists. I don't know why they are Catholics. I don't know how Catholics can live with themselves. I think the best Catholic right now is Candace Owen. I mean, she reflects their epistemology perfectly, and she is going to be a comic relief at the end of the show today. All right. So we will get to all those topics. Didn't expect to have a rant on why I despise Catholicism. I want to remind everybody that Anka Gate will be on tonight. I'm really looking forward to the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things. We'll talk about Trump and get his perspective on the first few months of the Trump administration. Is it worse, better than what he would have expected? What does he think as the key themes around kind of a philosopher's perspective on the key themes around it, and how worried is he about the future, about where we're heading? I think we'll also talk about a few other things. We'll talk about, does Ayn Rand's life matter? Does how she lived matter? Is her biography important at all? Or is it just, her ideas, forget about her life, it's ideas, that's all that matters, that's all we care about. And yeah, we shouldn't really talk about how her life. So we'll talk about that. I think that's an interesting topic because she's constantly attacked, right, for doing this or doing that. And I think that it's good to talk about that. And then, importantly, I want to talk to Anka about why we need intellectuals. Why intellectuals important? I mean, this relates somewhat to the point made on Rogan about, or not made on Rogan, or made on Rogan, the need for experts, but in this case, for experts in philosophy or experts in the application of philosophy. Or why do we need intellectuals in the culture? And I think Anka has a great perspective on this, and also some recent experiences that highlight the importance of this. So don't miss it tonight, 8:00. It's a real treat. Anka's hard to get because he's super busy, and it's going to be cool. We're also going to have on the 1st of May, we're going to have an economist who's done a lot of work on tariffs, trade, history of tariffs, and wrote his dissertation on the McKinley tariffs. So we'll get a first-hand account of whether Trump is right about those or not. I've got a lot of questions for him. It's going to be, I think that'll be a lot of fun. And I'm also going to try to get at least one, maybe two legal experts to come on and talk about all these cases going through the courts. So I'm going to try to get Ilya Somin. And by the way, I think that in the show on Saturday, I confused Ilya Somin and Ilya Shapiro, which is not good because while I follow both of them, and on some issues they're both excellent, on everything going on right now, Ilya Shapiro is disappointing, and Ilya Somin is excellent. So I'm going to try to get Ilya Somin on to talk about some of these court cases. I think he's got a great perspective. I also am trying to get Larry Salzman on those. So we might actually, in early May, have two lawyers on, legal experts on, to talk about what's going on with the courts, what's going on with the Supreme Court. By then, we'll have even more information. So these are the big issues. We'll have a trade experts, and then we'll have two legal experts, and we'll keep going. We'll keep going. Somebody said Yaron was abducted by aliens. Somebody should tell Yaron that. Yaron was abducted by aliens? How is that possible? All right, why would I get a Samsung? I don't understand. I don't understand any of these questions. Send super chat via iPhone is horrible too. A lot of times it doesn't work. I don't know why that is. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not sure about the aliens. I'm still trying to figure out, Sergey, the alien bit. Why, what me and being abducted has anything to do with anything. All right, guys. I'm looking. Let me open my iPhone, right? My iPhone, and check out. All right, the S&P is down 3.36%. The Dow is down 3.3%. The NASDAQ is down 3.55%. Now, that in and of itself, okay, that's interesting. And stock market's going down because expectations, I think, about potential recession are up. Expectations about lower earnings. We will get earnings from Tesla later today. Probably comment on that on tomorrow's show. But that is definitely... Drin says, Yaron, I'm afraid to tell you, you've been abducted by aliens. Well, I mean, if I've been abducted by aliens, I'm quite happy with that situation because this is fun. I'm having a blast. Aliens or no aliens. Anyway, what makes this particularly interesting in terms of what's going on is that stock market is going down, not just in the United States, globally. Usually when that happens, there's a rush to the dollar as a safe haven asset. But in our case today, the dollar is going down quite a bit. It's down 1% to the euro, and it's down almost, over 0.5% to the British pound, and it's down. I saw it was down earlier to the it's down over 1% to the yen. Those are the three currencies I follow. So the dollar's descent, unbelievably fast descent. It's been quite astounding. Is continuing. And at the same time, and this is what's interesting, interest rates are going up. So usually interest rates go up, the dollar goes up, stocks go down. That makes sense. But now, stocks are down, interest rates up, okay, makes sense. But the dollar's down as well. And on top of all that, what is turning out to be the real safe haven, the safe haven that everybody has embraced, and is always embraced. It always serves as a safe haven, but this is the ultimate safe haven, particularly if the dollar is going and people are rushing to look for a safe haven and then not going to invest in dollars. And I mean, the reality is nobody actually trusts, well, they don't want dollars. Nobody trusts the euro or any of the other currencies. So what's really going on is gold is up over 3%. So gold is at all-time highs at 3,436. I wish I owned more gold. I wish I'd bought more gold earlier, before Trump was elected. I should trade more on my geopolitical evaluations, right? That would indicate my real commitment to them. But it's bad. Interestingly, banks are not down as much as the rest of the market. So a lot of the market declines are being led by tech. Tech is down a lot. Tesla, in anticipation of earnings today, a little earlier was down 7%. I don't know what it's down today. Banks are less susceptible directly to foreign trade. They are more susceptible to small businesses, which are going to suffer because of foreign trade, but they're not directly related. And that's why they're doing a little bit better than the market. They were only down 2%. Plus, at this point yet, there is no financial crisis. I mean, to come. I think it's inevitable that there will be one. But right now there is none, and the market's not pricing one. So the financial crisis will happen when you get significant bankruptcies of businesses that then can't pay their loans, and that's where you get the banks will get into trouble. I guess the market is not anticipating that yet, although it's down 2%, so it's not trivial. I'm waiting to buy in the dip for the dip to get a lot deeper. Although I don't have any money to buy with. What am I talking about? All my money's in the market, so it's going down with everything else. All right, so markets are a disaster, and really behaving in ways that suggest a overall systematic lack of confidence in the U.S. So and it makes sense if tourists are not coming to the U.S., they don't need dollars. If people decide not to invest in the U.S., they don't need dollars. If because of a tariff war, people are not buying U.S. goods, they don't need dollars. If they're boycotting Tesla and they're not going to buy a Tesla, they don't need dollars. So the demand for dollars is declining. Interest rates are going up, maybe because of anticipation inflation, maybe just because risk is going up. And on top of all that, we know that government spending is not going down. I think I told you, the latest numbers out of Dodge used to be $2 trillion. They're going to cut, then $1 trillion. They're going to cut. Now it's $150 billion, but they really can only do 60, of which only like 20 or 30 are real. So insignificant amount of money being cut. And at Congress, we know that the budget that is being discussed right now in Congress is a budget that dramatically increases government spending over the next 10 years and increases the deficit dramatically over the next 10 years. They will tell you they're cutting spending because they're cutting it relative to what would have been if, right? So they're cutting the rate of growth. They're not cutting actual spending. All right, so that is where we are from the market's perspective. It's not good. It's not good. And this is not one of those things where it comes down and it automatically just go up because it will, because the U.S. economy is robust and strong. And this is one where for it to rebound and come back, real policy changes will have to happen. Some kind of signal will have to happen. And you have to believe that the Trump administration is, I was going to say the Biden administration. See, the Trump administration is capable of making those adjustments and making those changes, and we will see. We will see. I know a lot of people out there believe that, yeah, in the end, he's just going to reverse it all, and it's all going to go back to normal, and nothing will happen. We'll see. We'll see what he can get with. There is an argument to be made. We'll get to that. There is an argument to be made that if this continues, if the markets continue to go down, if prices continue to go up, if bankruptcies start to happen, if congressmen continue to be harassed when they go home in town halls, that at some point they will get the courage to stand up to Trump and to force the issue from a legislative perspective, maybe pass a law that it takes back the responsibility for tariffs to Congress. Although notice that Trump is using some War Emergency Act in order to do these tariffs. And anyway, it's all going to come to a head. Maybe the Supreme Court will save us. Hard to believe maybe Congress will get the balls, if things get bad enough, get the balls to save us. But I can't imagine Trump unilaterally backing out, even if some of his advisors would like him to do that. Okay, one of the reasons the market's panicking a little bit is because Trump, over the weekend, continued his, if you will, assault on the Federal Reserve and his egging them on to cut interest rates. There is more and more this idea that he is going to find a way to fire Powell, indeed, Jerome Powell. Indeed, the belief is right now that he would have already fired Jerome Powell, but there's belief in his circle, in his financial and economic advisors, that if he fires Powell, the market will really collapse, and he doesn't want that. So it's kind of interesting that Powell now is a hero, right? Powell is the guy who allowed inflation to happen. To the extent inflation is a monetary phenomena, the Fed is involved in its, facilitation, if nothing else. He missed inflation as a reality, and it took him way too long to respond to it. But you see, the people have very short-term memories. Right now, he's a hero. Why is he a hero? He's a hero because he engineered what they consider a soft landing, that is coming out of inflation. As he raised interest rates, the economy moderated, inflation came down, but the economy never went into recession, even though everybody expected it to. And for that, he is a hero. So everything that came before that is forgotten. And all that matters is that he somehow engineered this soft landing. I don't think Fed chairmen engineer much. I think they're flying blind most of the time, and they get lucky or unlucky during various times. There's very little knowledge and science that goes into what they're doing. But that is the consequences. Anyway, Donald Trump over the weekend put out a tweet. He says, he writes, preemptive cuts in interest rates are being called for by many, with energy costs way down, food prices, including Biden's egg disaster, substantially lower, and most other things trending down. There's virtually no inflation. With these costs trending so nicely downwards, just what I predicted they would do, there can be almost no inflation, but there can be a slowing of the economy unless Mr. Too Late, a major loser, lowers interest rates. Now, by the way, Powell was appointed by Trump. Europe has already lowered 7 times. Powell has always been too late, except when it comes to the election period, when he lowered in order to help sleepy Joe Biden, later Kamala, get elected. How did that work out? Anyway, Trump putting pressure on Powell to lower interest rates. Now, Powell has a dilemma. I mean, again, this is a conventional view of interest rates. The conventional view is that tariffs increase inflation. Prices are going to go up. And there's no question that prices of goods that have any inputs that are imported primarily from China, we'll get to the extent to which China, we have a lot of inputs from China. All of those products are going to go up in price. Now, I don't think technically that counts as inflation, because other prices are going to have to adjust because we don't have any more money. Inflation is when we print more money, we have more money, and therefore can pay for all these goods more. Here, it's some stuff will go up, some stuff will go down. But anyway, a lot of goods are going to go up. So the whole Trump thing about prices coming down is BS, particularly given that he is single-handedly responsible for prices coming down, prices going up because of tariffs. So, Powell is looking at that and is saying, if prices are going to go up, I don't want to lower interest rates, and that will cause more demand. That'll raise prices even more. That's not good. On the other hand, tariffs are going to cause potentially cause a recession. And if there's a recession, you want to decrease interest rates because you want to lower borrowing costs, I guess, again, from a central planning perspective, lower cost of borrowing for people so that that can mitigate the recession. This is why stagflation is such a bad phenomenon, because what do you do exactly when you have stagflation? You've got inflation and stagnation, or inflation and recession. What do you do? So Powell's in this dilemma. Trump, it's easy. Low interest rates. Trump is a believer in super artificially low interest rates. That's what he believes in. That's what he's always believed in. And he wants to appoint somebody who agrees with him. Powell does not. Now, Powell's no hero. Powell's no great economist. Powell's no great chairman of the Fed. But he isn't a Trump puppet. That's his one great virtue. And basically the markets are saying, don't touch Jerome Powell. Now, what does preemptive cuts mean? That's kind of funny, right? What is preemptive? What are they preempting? Well, what they're preempting is, Trump is admitting here, what they're preempting is a recession. Caused by what? What would cause a recession right now? The economy's doing great. Was doing fine. What would cause a recession? Trump's trade policies. So we need a preemptive cut to counter Trump's own stupid economic policy. Kind of interesting that Trump is writing this. Trump is writing this. A senator over the weekend actually disagreed with Trump. I mean, I was shocked. A Republican senator, I have to say. A Republican senator said something opposed to Trump. Maybe they're starting to find their cojones. Maybe they're getting some courage. I don't know. We'll see. But this is John Kennedy, a Louisiana Republican who sits on the Senate Banking Committee, said this weekend, I don't think the president, any president, has the right to remove the Federal Reserve chairman. I think the Federal Reserve ought to be independent. I mean, good for Senator Kennedy. I mean, that Kennedy, well, whatever. Good for Senator Republican Kennedy for standing up to Trump on even this relatively small issue. Yes, the Fed should be independent. Yes, the president should not be able to fire the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Ultimately, there should be no Federal Reserve. But if we're going to have a Federal Reserve, make it the least political you can. Make it as independent as possible. Now, I will say that basically Federal Reserve chairmen during the 1970s were fired, weren't explicitly, but they were urged to resign. And ultimately, that's how we got Paul Volcker. So, you know, and with enough pressure, maybe we can get a bad federal chairman out and a good one in. But anyway, I'm still waiting for Senator Cassidy, Republican from, is he also Louisiana? Anyway, Senator Cassidy, who was the doctor, the one guy who was gonna stand up to RFK. I'm still waiting for him to do his mea culpa and to admit he was wrong, and to criticize this administration's handling of healthcare issues. Anyway, we're in a trade war with China. I think tariffs are up to above 200% on Chinese goods coming in. The Chinese won't raise, but the tariffs are 125% on outgoing. But the trade war is multidimensional, so there's other things going on other than actual tariffs. For example, the Chinese are not selling their rare earth materials to the United States at any price. Over the weekend, Trump suggested again, as he suggested last week or so, over and over again, that he would like to negotiate a deal with the Chinese. But the actual response from China has been silence. I mean, China has, at this point, I think, no interest to negotiate with the United States. China is basically giving the middle finger to the Trump administration. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I don't think China, I don't think the suffering here is going to be proportional. I think at the end of the day, China has the upper hand in this war. It knows it, and it's going to play it cool until they think they've worn down the Trump administration, they can get a better deal. The Trump administration is not convinced the world, maybe even trying to convince the Chinese, that no, the United States has the upper hand. So, for example, he says, we export to them 1/5 of what they export to us. But you see, to them, exports are what matter, right? Exporting is the real important stuff. And that's just not the reality. The reality is the U.S. economy is very much integrated with the Chinese economy. And so a lot of the goods that we get in the United States are either straight up made in China or components of it are made in China. I mean, I was just reading a story in Forbes about military drones. You know, Silicon Valley is building, there's a bunch of companies now that have got funding from venture capitalists to build military drones for the Pentagon with the idea of using them against the Chinese. But guess where the component for the drones come from? I mean, we really don't have a robust battery industry in the United States. We don't have a robust drone engine industry in the United States, and the Chinese do. And these things are much cheaper and better right now in China than they are here. Indeed, many of the drone manufacturers in the US building drones for the Pentagon in anticipation of a conflict with China over Taiwan are building them using components from China. And they're basically shut down right now. And they don't know what they're going to do. And yeah, they could start manufacturing all that stuff in the US, and this will force them to do that. But that's going to take time, a lot of time. It's not easy. It's going to take capital we have, let's say. And it's going to take money. I mean, money in a sense of components are going to be more expensive. So airframes, batteries, radios, cameras, screens, all of those things imported from China. So we're taking a hit right now. These companies are taking hits right now. I mean, just think of it this way. China produces more than 70% of the world's, not just the US's, the world's lithium-ion batteries. 70%. So it's not exporting any to America right now. Ooh, you might say, you know, the US, China's going to suffer. Well, maybe, but the rest of the world's still buying lithium-ion batteries, and maybe some countries will switch, and it's a growing industry, and they can easily export to other countries instead of the US. Now, the US will try to source lithium-ion batteries from other places other than China, but it's going to be difficult. 70% of the world's air conditioners. Luckily, we have one. But if you had to replace them, if your air conditioning breaks right now and you want to buy a new air conditioner, there's a good chance that whatever you would buy, it was made by China. And if not, that a piece of it was made in China. And that piece now is not accessible to American manufacturers. Or if it is, it's accessible at 250% or 245% of what it was. So the price of that component, and my guess is a lot of AC manufacturers or manufacturers generally are going to say, we're not going to buy stuff from China at 245%. We're going to try to source it from elsewhere, but that's going to take some time. In the meantime, there'll be shortages. And it's still going to cost more than it originally cost in China. And in the meantime, we're just going to sit on it and we're going to delay delivery because I don't think we can pass on the cost. Cookware, cooking stuff, pots and pans, things I know nothing about. I know more about air conditioning than I know about cookware. 70% of that made in China. 80% of the world's smartphones, kitchen appliances, and toys are made in China. Now, again, you know, they'll start shipping them to Vietnam and we'll import them from Vietnam. But it's not going to be that simple. First of all, now we have tariffs on Vietnam. And second, all this takes time to adjust. And in the meantime, it's not the toys just get expensive. In the meantime, toys they disappear. You're just not going to see them. You're not going to have toys because you're not going to pay 3 times the prices, so the shelves are going to be empty until they rejuggle the supply lines. And we somehow get Chinese toys with a label that says made in India or Vietnam or whatever. And then 90% of the world's solar panels and 90% of processed rare earth minerals come from China. Now, I think they've stopped exporting rare earth metals to the United States. So again, people will buy them from other sources and, you know, we'll get around them, but at a cost and time. And you can't build any cars, phones, military technology without rare earth materials, processed ones. I don't really care that much about solar panels. Maybe you guys do. I don't care. But yeah, good luck getting solar panels in the near to medium term future. So, you know, the United States could stop building those at home. I don't know how. I don't know where you get the workforce, where you get both engineers on the one hand and the manual labor to do it, or the capital to build the robots and the technology to build the robots. It's possible. I mean, look, we shouldn't be too pessimistic about that. I mean, Ukraine today is producing hundreds of thousands of drones locally. So going back to this drone technology, as far as I know, without Chinese parts, they're building everything themselves because they don't want to be reliant on anybody else, and they need huge quantities because drones have become the #1 weapon on the battlefield. So Ukraine is building them themselves, and I've seen pictures of the assembly line, and it's almost all automated. They've got robots doing it all. So Ukraine has done that in the midst of war. You know, the United States could do it. There's no question, and it will do it. You know, Silicon Valley will adapt. But there is a cost, and it does take time, and everything will cost more. And this is what the market is adjusting for. It's not that the world is going to zero. It's that the world is, that America is becoming less efficient, less productive, and the cost of living is going to go up. Going to go up. I've talked to small businesses that are struggling because it's hard to tell what's going on. You know, a lot of suppliers are putting now on tariff surcharges even before they're paying the tariff because they're not sure what their costs are going to be down the road. They're trying to capture as much of it in advance as possible. Nobody knows what the tariff are going to be, right? We're on a 90-day pause where you only have 10% if it's not from China, and you have 245 if it is from China, unless there's certain goods that are excluded, and then 25% automobile parts and 25% other things, and Canada and Mexico. I mean, it's a mess. All these small businesses have to figure out this mess, something they didn't have to do a couple of months ago. The costs are going up. The uncertainty is huge. They don't know if they can get certain products, parts. They just don't know because if they're sourced from China, they might not even get them at any price. So, you know, you've got a real economic challenge here. This is non-trivial. This is major. You could say trade is a small percentage of the U.S. GDP, and that is true. But I don't think that captures the extent to which it affects American GDP. Because, you know, the parts you might be bringing in are worth very little. But those parts are essential for the building of bigger things that are worth a lot. And without those cheap parts, you can't build the worthwhile parts. So China, the problem with Chinese imports is they're underestimated in terms of their true value, because the value added that China produces in terms of value is small. But since they are the dominant producer in so many areas, it's very difficult to produce the more value-added stuff without them. Now, China's also prepared for this. China prepared for this trade war. Ever since 2018, Trump's trade war, China has figured out what it needs to do in order to withstand Trump. It's invested heavily in industries like energy, agriculture, semiconductor production to reduce its dependence on the United States. It's developed alternative sources for things that it really does depend on the U.S. for, certain agricultural products like soybeans, sorghum, and other things, but they can get those from Brazil and Argentina and other parts of the world. So they have reduced their dependence on American imports in preparation for a trade war. The United States has done nothing to prepare itself for a trade war. So Trump could have spent the next 2 years getting the American industry and getting Americans ready for a trade war with China and then launched it. But that's not Trump. That would require planning and strategy, and that would require patience from MAGA. No. He wants to break stuff, and he is breaking stuff. Stuff is breaking. No question. Stuff is breaking. So China's much better prepared, in a much better condition to deal with what is happening right now. It's been preparing. The United States has not. All right. Thank you, Ali. Copy pasting it. Ooh, this gives greater urgency to my need to start catching up on my reviews. Ali just asked me to $500 to review a book by Evola, which I'm not going to enjoy, but that's why I get paid the big bucks. Thanks, Ali. All right. So as I said, China's ready. U.S. is not. And the way Trump is behaving, he's so driven by whim, lacks strategy, lacks planning, lacks thinking, any kind of thinking, that, it's likely that the U.S. is going to suffer a lot more than the Chinese are going to suffer from what is going on right now. Now, China will suffer as well. There's no question. A lot of its exports are now going to be shut down, basically. They're going to have to find new markets. That takes time. And that's going to be slow. And China is in economic trouble already. But again, China's much better prepared, much readier than we are to do that. So it's going to be painful to watch what happens next. And you're already starting to see this. Now, Trump, because he's very aware and he's very connected and he knows what's going on in the world and he knows what's going on with himself and everything else, Trump tweeted the following over the weekend. All caps. This one is all caps, no lower caps. This is one big shout out. The businessmen who criticize tariffs are bad at business, but really bad at politics. They don't understand or realize that I am the greatest friend that American capitalism has ever had. Oh, God. David Stockman, who was the head of the budget office under Reagan, who presents himself as a friend of capitalism, wrote in response to that, "Hey, Donald, real capitalism thrives on free market. State-imposed 145% tariff on voluntary commerce are not remotely helpful to capitalist prosperity." Yeah, Donald Trump, capitalism is not helped by raising taxes, not helped by destruction of trade, not helped by destruction of supply chains, not helped by an ever-growing, ever-intrusive, ever-manipulative government. None of that is helped. So capitalism is not being helped by what you're doing. It's suffering. Please stop helping capitalism. Please, with friends like you, capitalism needs no enemies. Already we're seeing some of the consequences of these tariffs. They're pretty young, but we're already seeing them. So just to note, Trump promised us that lots and lots of money would come in, right? Revenues would mushroom as a consequence of tariffs. Tariffs would replace the income tax. Remember that? Well, in 15 days, since the big imposition of the tariffs, the Treasury has raised about $500 million from tariffs. Now, that sounds like a lot of money. But if you extrapolate that over a year, that is about $12 billion if trade patterns continue the way they are, and there's no reason to assume they will be. It's likely to be less than that. $12 billion. $12 billions of dollars. Just in the stock market, we've lost trillions of dollars. That's thousands of billions. The interest on the debt by the government has increased so that the deficit is now much bigger than the $12 billion coming in. The dollar is weaker. so that it's much more expensive for Americans to buy what they're buying because the dollar's weak. And of course, business is being wiped out all over the world, in America and China, in Europe, in Latin America and Mexico and Canada. Businessmen are suffering. And we've antagonized pretty much everybody. A world that was generally super benevolent towards the United States. People want to come here. People wanted to invest here. People wanted to trade with us. People loved America, particularly in the developing world. We've destroyed that. People are antagonistic to America. 12 billion can fund a deficit? Sorry. That's just one of the funniest things I've read in a long, long time. It would take Edward to make me laugh. I mean, 12 billion. We're running structural deficits of 2 trillion. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. So this wouldn't cover 1% of the deficit, and the deficit has just expanded because of the tariffs. Interest rates are going up, so we're spending more on debt. It's not even a start. It's actually tariffs have made the deficit bigger. If you take into account the rise in interest rates that are caused by the tariffs, just like the increased revenue are caused by the tariffs. Tariffs have made the deficit bigger. It's an end. It's destructive. But you see the zombies, it's good to have Edward here so he can be our zombie representative. The Trump zombies, Trump said it would shrink the deficit, therefore it'll shrink the deficit. All evidence and all reality and all facts to the contrary doesn't make one difference. So the 12 billion basically is enough to fund the U.S. military for 4 days. So we've got an annual income that can fund the U.S. military budget for 4 days. I predict the number will be smaller than 12 billion by the time of the end of the year because the changing trade patterns will make it go away. In addition, just since we're singing the praises of tariffs, in addition, here are the Trump tariff layoffs. These are companies that have explicitly said that they are laying people off because of tariffs. Now, none of these numbers are huge, but this is just the beginning. This is just days. Stellantis, what used to be Chrysler, 900 people laid off April 3rd. Mack Trucks, between 250 to 350, April 18th. Cleveland Cliffs. Now, this one's surprising because Cleveland Cliffs is a steel company. You'd think that they would be hiring because of steel tariffs are protective of them. No, because demand for steel is down because of the suffering all these other industries have. They're laying off 1,830 people. John Deere is laying off. Summit Interconnect, Bando USA, Wilson Creek Energy, Advanced Draining Systems, Sensata Technologies, Volvo Cars. I didn't know they made Volvos in the U.S., but Volvo Cars laying people off. So, this is just the beginning, right? This is the beginning, and this is just a little bit. These are small numbers, but it's going to get a lot worse. Mack Trucks basically said they're laying off people in their Allenton, Pennsylvania, center because of the economic uncertainty caused by U.S. tariffs. Quote, heavy-duty truck orders continue to be negatively affected by market uncertainty about freight rates and demand, possible regulatory changes, and the impact of tariffs. So they're shrinking their workforce, as you'd expect. Honeywell notified customers of a 42% increase. 42% increase for all 454Bs. I don't know what those are. Citing rising raw material costs from anticipated tariffs. This follows a 15% increase the company implemented on the A2L refrigerant in February and an additional 8% hike in March. Prices are going up because of tariffs. DHL Express has announced that it will be suspending the delivery of packages worth $800 or more to the United States, following a significant increase in, quote, red tape with customs and import controls as a result of recent worldwide tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. So no packages delivered by DHL because of the disaster. California Valley, where they grow alfalfa. Alfalfa is some kind of vegetable. Sounds terrible, but you know, people eat alfalfa. Maybe cows eat alfalfa. I don't know. Anyway, Chinese tariffs have crushed the alfalfa export market. I'm just reading you headlines because and you could read this all day because they're coming in all day. It's everywhere. China was building large LNG facilities to import natural gas from the United States. One of the big expansions of LNG was going to be the United States delivering natural gas to China. China has just suspended all LNG imports from the United States. It's buying no LNG from the United States. Oh, alfalfa is cow feed. That makes sense. Doesn't sound like human feed. No warning, no phase down. Just an apparent state directive, the Chinese buyers, including the national oil companies, were no longer to sign, lift, or receive U.S. liquefied natural gas because of the trade war. I mean, this is all amazing. And Trump's a genius. What can I say? He is a genius. Trump is now making an argument that he is going to use tariff revenue, all that money that's going to flow in, the gazillions of dollars, they're going to flow in from raising taxes on Americans that foreigners are going to pay. He's going to raise taxes on Americans, but foreigners are going to pay the tax. That is one of the great magic tricks of all time. Anyway, all that revenue now he's going to use to finance additions to the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Because we don't have a deficit, we don't have debt to pay off, because we're running surpluses, because we have all the money in the world, and why not just buy Bitcoin with the money? What the hell? I mean, it really doesn't get any dumber than this. This is, again, from an economic perspective, I don't need to say it. Anyway, this is just horrific. Now, Trump is also saying, you probably heard him say this, that everybody is coming to our doorstep to negotiate. Everybody wants to negotiate deals, trade deals. Everyone wants a deal because they don't like the tariffs. They want a deal. Well, some countries are coming over, and for example, the Japanese trade delegation came to meet in good faith with Trump's economic team. And after a while, they came to the realization that Trump's team didn't know what they wanted, had no clue what they wanted out of the negotiations, and they lacked any authority to decide on a deal anyway. So the Japanese got up and just left. They've gone home. This is how it was reported. The Japanese have just been in Washington. Their experience apparently was that they went to talk to the American leadership on this matter, tariffs, and the American leadership said, "What are you offering?" And the Japanese said, "Well, what is it that you want?" And the Americans could not explain what they wanted. So they left. That's the deals. The deals are just amazing deals. They're coming down the pipeline. Just wait and see. You'll see amazing, amazing deals. Now think about it. Japan, for example, spent about 10 years negotiating a trade deal with the United States and with a whole bunch of other Pacific Rim countries. It was called the TPP. And it was a free trade deal. It wasn't perfect. I was quite critical of it at the time. This is but it was moving trade in the right direction. That is, dramatically lower tariffs. And when Trump came into office in 2017, he withdrew the United States from that deal. So they've experienced what it's like to do a deal with Trump. It's meaningless. I mean, the reality is Trump doesn't want trade deals. Not fair, unfair, fair. Nobody can define fair. Nobody can define fair. Nobody. I've asked. Nobody can define what fair trade deal means. It's just like when you ask the left, what's a fair distribution of wealth? What's a fair welfare state? What's a fair economy? They can't define it. They have no idea. They have no idea. And now it's people on the right, used to be people on the left, can't define what a fair trade deal is. They have no conception. Again, it's one of those things they're taught in zombie school, in Trump zombie syndrome school. There is such a thing. Yeah, definitely. On Twitter, you can go to Trump zombie syndrome school, where you learn the zombie things that you must say. Trade? Oh, we need fair trade. And when I remind people that that is a terminology that comes directly from the left, from Bernie Sanders and AOC, they don't care. They don't care. They want right-wing fair trade, not left-wing fair trade. Right-wing fair trade. So they want fair trade. Yeah, I haven't got a Hegseth yet. I know. That's fine. Got a lot to say today. And I don't have a lot to say about Hegseth. It's like, told you so. I told you. I mean, I should do that for all these topics. Just say, told you. On to the next topic. Told you. So what is the motivation of Japanese to have a trade deal with the United States when the United States walks away from those negotiations anyway? And then think about all the, other deals that Trump has actually signed with people. He had a deal with South Korea. He's reneged on it. He had a deal with Canada. He's reneged on it. He had a deal with Mexico. He's reneged on it. For years and years and years, he tried to negotiate a trade with UK. Still hasn't got a deal with UK. Why would anybody invest in trying to do a deal with Trump? It's like the dumbest thing in the world. It would be meaningless. It's going to be endless. And it ain't going to be fair. We know that. Because you can't even define what fair is. So, yeah. Tariffs, trade continues to be a disaster. It's a disaster that'll play out, I think, over time. There's a chance that Trump will walk back some of this stuff. There's a chance that supply chain routes will get rerouted in a way that reduce the impacts of tariffs. But in the meantime, it's causing real harm to real people and real businesses. And for what? For actually no value, zero benefit. Zero benefit. No value, nothing. So just destruction for the sake of destruction. Destruction for the sake of destruction. All right, let's talk about Hegseth. So another story of another leak where Hegseth provided, classified information on Signal, I guess on a Signal group that his family was on, and there was classified information there, and that's been going around. Remember, this is the guy who lambasted Hillary Clinton for her email usage, and that anybody who got caught with that would be fired immediately under any other. He hasn't been fired yet. Indeed, Trump today reaffirmed his support for him, so he is not fired. But more interesting, I think, ultimately, is the stories coming out of the Pentagon of complete and utter chaos at the Pentagon. Where is this article? Oh, there it is. One of Hegseth's allies, a guy named John Ulliott, who came in and with Hegseth into the department with the election of Trump, actually resigned, I guess, last week and wrote an op-ed about what a disaster the Pentagon, the Defense Department is under Hegseth's leadership. I mean, it's hard to take everything he says here seriously because we have to remember, in spite of what he says here, Hegseth is my friend. He's still going to be my friend. Hegseth is never going to forgive this betrayal and the stabbing in the back. But basically, he's saying Hegseth doesn't know what he's doing. This is beyond his capability. That as he describes it, the last month has been full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration. Note, a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon. I don't think that's good. It really isn't good. Now, inside the Pentagon's top ranks, I mean, last Friday, Hegseth fired 3 of his most loyal senior staffers, and then he fired one of his top aides. So 4 of the top people in the department have now been fired and not been replaced. And there's just people are stabbing each other in the back, talking about each other, accusing each other. I guess Hegseth's chief of staff, Joe Casper, was also leaving his role. Didn't say he was fired. He's the guy who requested an investigation into Pentagon leaks. The other 3 were fired because they were leaked, and now the guy who requested the leaks was fired, I guess, for requesting the investigation into the leaks. Now, here's the bigger point. Hegseth was never qualified to lead the Department of Defense. This is one of the largest employers in the world. It employs 3 million people. I'm not kidding. 3 million people. Hegseth, I don't think, has managed more than 10, 20 people. Maybe not even that. Hegseth gives no indication that he has the intellectual ability or the managerial ability or the organizational ability to manage a department responsible for the defense of the United States, that employs 3 million people, that is making strategic decisions on a daily basis, where the lives and the future of American depends on. The kind of weapon systems invested in today will determine our ability to defend ourselves in the future. The kind of training, the kind of generals that we have today will determine whether in the future we can defend ourselves against China, Russia, Iran, whoever. This guy is incompetent. And, I'm not even blaming him. He doesn't have the experience. He's never led significant numbers of troops in battle. He's never led an organization, but he's also not been a deep thinker about issues relating to defense and structuring the Defense Department. And you can imagine somebody without the experience, but I don't know, who's written a couple of books and, who really thinks deeply about what the Defense Department should look like and what should be the strategic orientation and focus of the United States in the future. He hasn't done that either. He's written a book, but it has none of that. He's an amateur who has leaked information on signals, who knows where else and who knows what else. He strikes me as just a bit of a creep. We know he has an alcohol problem. He had to literally swear that he would not drink as Secretary of Defense because the Senate was very focused on his alcohol problem and on his womenizing problem. What they weren't focused on is his experience problem, his intellectual problem, and his strategic problem. That's Congress for you. Indeed, I have no doubt at all that Republican senators, many of whom are much smarter than Hegseth, knew that Hegseth was not qualified for the job. And yet, in an act of unbelievably irresponsibility to their constituency, to the people of the United States of America, they elected a bozo to run the Defense Department, to protect us, to engage in war. Somebody who has no clue. This is who they selected. This is who they approved. I mean, it just shows again and again and again the extent to which our system is broken. Our Congress is incompetent, is not doing its job. I mean, just think, I can think of 5, 6, 7, 8 people who this administration nominated for positions that Congress, even doing mildly its job, should have turned them down. Hegseth being close to the top of that list. So none of this surprises me. And Trump is going to support him because he is a big supporter of Trump. Trump only cares about one thing, loyalty. This op-ed that this guy, this so-called friend, wrote says, even strong backers of the secretary like me must admit the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon. It's becoming a real problem for the administration. There are very likely more shoes to drop in short order, with even bigger bombshell stories coming this week. Key Pentagon reporters have been telling sources privately. Now, I don't know if that's true. We will see. But it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good, right? And in terms of the leak, I'm reading from the story. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared detailed information about forthcoming strikes in Yemen on March 15th in a private Signal group chat that included his wife, brother, and personal lawyer, according to 4 people with knowledge of the chat. Some of these people said the information Mr. Hegseth shared on the Signal chat included the flight schedules for the F-A-18 Hornets targeting the Houthis in Yemen, essentially the same attack plan that he shared on a separate Signal chat the same day that mistakenly included the editor of The Atlantic. I mean, these people are just incompetent amateurs. Any decent president would fire them. Here's a particularly disturbing story, again, coming out of the Trump administration. So the Trump administration is now using U.S. attorneys to intimidate academic journals by sending them letters demanding they explain how they ensure, quote, viewpoint diversity. Journal editors should be public about this and coordinate to refuse to comply with these fascist tactics. I'm reading from a post, right? So it really is stunning. I mean, journals don't have to be viewpoint neutral. They don't have to provide diversity. These are private journals. Here's one from Edwin Martin. This is the guy who has said that his loyalty is to Donald Trump, not to the Constitution. The U.S. attorney from the District of Columbia. He's writing to a journal. As United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, I receive frequent requests for information and clarification. I take these requests seriously and act on them with letters like this one you're receiving. It has been brought to my attention that more and more journals and publications, like Chess Journal, are conceding that they are partisans in various scientific debates. That is, that they have a position for which they are advocating either due to advertising under postal code or sponsorship. The public has certain expectations, and you have certain responsibilities. No, they don't. I'm also interested to know if publishers, journals, and organizations with which you work are adjusting their method of acceptance of competing viewpoints. Are they new norms being developed and offered? Why is this any of the government's business? How could this be any of the government's business? This is a direct intervention in speech. How is this different than all the things that the Biden administration was accused of violating free speech, which were all true? And this is an exemplar of exactly the same thing. It's just horrific. This is a story, you know, a lot of people are reporting this. I assume it's true. I have no firsthand, I haven't verified it firsthand, but a lot of different sources are reporting this. 2 German teenage girls were strip searched and then jailed and then deported by ICE officials in Hawaii. Basically, what was the reason? They had this trip planned out where they were going to island hop in Hawaii. But there were days where they didn't have yet reservations at Airbnbs or hotels. Now, what they told the officials was they wanted to be a little spontaneous, and they were gonna get hotels. But they had return tickets to Germany, I guess, and they were tourists. They were coming here just as tourists. And then because of this, I don't know what threat they posed. The worst thing they could do is overstay their visa, which a lot of people do anyway. What crime is that exactly? Who is suffering? Who's the victim? Anyway, there's a law. Remember, there's a law. For this, for not having the itinerary completely nailed down, the girls, again, were strip searched, jailed, and deported. I mean, they described the conditions under they were jailed with real criminals, moldy mattresses, rudimentary toilets. Yeah, jail. All right, so now we're going to investigate tourists, and we're going to run them through all these questionnaires. And if they don't have answers to all our questions, we're going to simply jail them. I mean, these girls were 18 and 19 years old. They're planning a 5-week island hopping trip. Oh, by the way, yeah, they filled out all the forms in advance. They got their ESTA, which is the travel clearance form that you have to do as a tourist. Because they didn't pre-book their vacation. That's a national security threat that requires deportation and jailing and strip searching. One of the scariest things, I mentioned this yesterday, I was on Harry Bingswanger's show, I guess, or his forum. And one of the things I mentioned yesterday, one of the scariest things that I think is going on in America today, and I don't know if you guys have internalized this really, but it's really becoming real to me, is that we have people who are willing to execute the orders of the president in the most vulgar, disgusting, despicable, insane, irrational, rights-violating way possible. These ICE agents, these immigration agents, these custom agents who are willing to jail people, deport people, send them to jails and, in El Salvador without asking a question, without thinking, is this right? And if you ask them, do you think what you're doing is right? Well, look, we're just following orders. Just following orders. Brown shirts. Yeah, brown shirts. Little nobodies following orders. Again, this is how you get fascism. This is how you get authoritarianism. You need a class of people just following orders. And what it brings out also is how vicious these people are. Like, you can follow orders and you can be humane about it and so on, but no, we're going to follow orders and we're going to enjoy, relish throwing 2 young German girls into a jail with hardened criminals. That's going to be good. That's going to be fun. I mean, the human beings, the people that are manning these positions at ICE and the border are scary. Years and years ago, George Reisman, I remember in a talk, called them the American SS. And it seemed like a real exaggeration at the time. Maybe not. Maybe not. All right, I want to step back a second. We won't spend a lot of time on this because, we've done this quite a bit. I want to step back a second and kind of summarize where we are with Trump, right? And what's going on here. I mean, think about it. He's assaulting Harvard. It's not as much about Harvard as it is about imposing federal control over private universities. Because it's not just Harvard, it's other universities, and it's supposed to be. I mean, the whole point of Harvard is it's supposed to be it's supposed to send a signal to other universities to toe the line. There's this huge assault on law firms. It's just, we've talked about this, just horrible. And what's the purpose of it? It's basically to align the law firms around Trump's agenda, to prevent them from taking on cases against the administration and against Trump, and to get them on board with his agenda. He's negating due process. And he's poo-pooing it. Due process. Criminals don't get due process. I mean, stupid things. Negating educational freedom. Negating the right to have a private company and live by it. Trying to negate the right or the ability to attain representation freely. Negating the ability of businesses and individuals to trade with whoever they want. I mean, all of this is really from Abrago Garcia to Harvard to the law firms to tariffs to free speech, telling journals what they can and cannot write, who they can and cannot publish. We're not quite there yet, but that's the indication. They're trying to intimidate them into taking that view. This is all about control. This is all about Trump wanting to make people fear him. He loves Xi. He loves Putin. And the reason he loves them is because people are afraid of them. People give them respect. Not out of love. He knows that. But out of fear. He loves that idea. I mean, for years I've been telling you that he is an authoritarian. That's what he cares about. He wants control, and he wants fear. He wants people to salute him. He wants people to stand up when he walks into a room. He wants, quote, respect. And he doesn't care whose lives he destroys, how many people he rattles, how many people lose their jobs. He doesn't care what exactly happens. He just wants them to be afraid of him. And I think he gets some sadistic joy. I really do. Like a narcissistic, sadistic joy out of watching them squirm. And then there are others in his universe who want control. It's all about control. This is what the real authoritarians want. They want to use all the things the left, they want to do all the things the left has done to this country, but they want to do the same thing, but from the right. They want to control speech, just like the left. They want to control the universities, just like the left. I guess they want to destroy the economy, just like the left. And Chris Rufo last week wrote, the right is learning new political tactics. Yeah, the tactics of fascism. We are not going to indulge the fantasies of the classical liberals. God help us, classical liberals, who fortified all of the institutions. No, fortified, forfeited all of the institutions. We're going to fight tooth and nail to recapture the regime and entrench our ideas in the public sphere. Get ready. Yeah. He links to this article that is titled "Meet MAGA's Favorite Communist." Conservative activists like Christopher Rufo are taking inspiration from Antonio Gramsci, the 20th century Marxist thinker who drew up a battle plan for winning the cultural wars. This is about Rufo, and I'll just quote from this. For the past year, Rufo has been working on a book called How the Regime Rules, which he described as a manifesto for the new right. At its core is a surprising inspiration, the Italian communist thinker Antonio Gramsci, a longtime boogeyman of American conservatives. Quote, Gramsci, in a sense, provides the diagram of how politics works and the relationship between all the various component parts, intellectuals, institutions, law, culture, folklore, said Rufo, a senior fellow at Manhattan Institute. Gramsci died in 1937, but he can be seen as the godfather of today's culture wars. A dedicated opponent of Italy's fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, he spent most of his last decade in prison, where he developed a highly influential new way of thinking about politics that put culture, rather than economics, at the center of class struggle. This is who inspires the new right. And Rufo is one of the saner, better of the new rights, if you can say that. We're heading into very scary territory. I think I don't have to tell you that. I think you know that. All right. Now for entertainment from the new right. This is stunning. Candace Owen calling out Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is also of the new right, but not quite as wacky, insane, crazy as Candace Owen is. So this is what Candace is saying. Quote, you must come to terms with the fact that NASA and space missions have always been this fake and gay, and you need to learn the history of NASA and the Apollo program, which were occult and satanic. It was literally meant to be an antichrist movement, to make people believe in man. Now, there's a real profound truth in what she's saying. A real profound truth in what she's saying. Indeed, NASA was. Part of its goal was to make us believe in the capabilities of reason, of man's ability, reaching for the stars. But for Candace, that is Antichrist. That is the essence of satanic. And by the way, this is not a joke. This is serious. You must come to terms with the fact that NASA and space missions have always been this fake and gay, whatever the hell that means. And you need to learn, I guess gay is one of the worst insults you can give to somebody. And you need to learn the history of NASA and the Apollo program, which were occult and satanic. It was literally meant to be an antichrist movement to make people believe in man. What could be worse than people believing in man? She goes on to say, now here's where it gets, I hope to find you rolling with laughter. Quote, homies were on the moon. Homies were on the moon. This is an argument about how it's all fake, right? Homies were on the moon, making phone calls before the time of cell phone. Like, hey, what's up, Prez? It's me on the moon with the flag. So Candace doesn't know about any other communication technology other than cell phones. She does not believe that you can talk from the moon to Earth via radio communication. That in her very large mind, that is impossible, an impossibility. So the very fact that they talked to Earth, to Mission Control, and to the president, I guess, they took a phone call. That is evidence that it's all fake because, hey, cell phones didn't come into existence until the 1980s. And if you don't have a cell phone, you can't wirelessly communicate with Earth from the moon. Now, if I took my iPhone to the moon, I could call home. E.T., call home, something like that. Call home. I could call home. But no, NASA in 1969, 8, 7, did not have the communication technology to connect astronauts on the moon to mission control. I mean, welcome people to the dumber than a brick new right. I mean, is there anybody on the left this stupid? I mean, there are people on the left that are as immoral as she is, but is there anybody on the left this stupid? No. I mean, the new right is uniquely stupid. I mean, literally stupid. They have awful ideas, bad ideas, horrible ideas. And then they're just, those ideas have made them incapable of thinking. Literally subverted their ability to reason. And it all comes from the top. It all comes from the top. Now, I don't know if you guys read Donald Trump's Easter message to the American people. I'm going to read it to you. And just think about, this is a message from the President of the United States. I want you to think, those of you who know Ayn Rand's writings, think about the reverence Ayn Rand had for the position of the President of the United States. Think of the kind of respect and admiration for the role, not necessarily for the people who inhabited it. And think of how low Donald Trump is, as reflected in this message. How just gross and disgusting and low this man is. And how, I mean, stupid he is. Now, he's successful because the people who have become zombies have no mind anymore and they're willing to just follow. And I guess some of this grossness inspires some people. So we live in a culture in which this message from the commander-in-chief, from the President of the United States of America, from the country of Washington and Jefferson and Adams and Hamilton, this is the leader of the free world speaking. And think about a country that elected this guy and that supports this guy. Think about what that says about the country we live in. Happy Easter to all, including the radical left lunatics who are fighting and scheming so hard to bring murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners, the mentally insane and well-known MS-13 gang members and wife beaters back into our country. Happy Easter also to the weak and ineffective judges and law enforcement officials who are allowing the sinister attack on our nation to continue, an attack so violent that it will never be forgotten. I mean, there's literally blood in the streets. People are dying because of these judges. Sleepy Joe Biden purposefully allowed millions of criminals to enter our country, totally unvetted and unchecked, through an open border policy that will go down in history as the single most calamitous act ever perpetrated upon America. Not Pearl Harbor. This. He was, by far, our worst and most incompetent president, a man who had absolutely no idea what he was doing. But to him, and to the person that ran and manipulated the auto pen, perhaps our real president, and to all the people who cheated in the 2020 presidential election in order to get this highly destructive moron elected, I wish you, with great love, sincerity, and affection, a happy Easter. Now, I know he's trolling, but this is sick. This is a sick man. This is not a man. I mean, Biden was demented. He had dementia. Trump is crazy. He's just a nutcase. We have a nutcase running a government. He is commander in chief, and he's a nutcase. He has no clue the consequence of what he does. He just mouths off. He is an angry, horrible human being that we have put into the same position as put into the position of President of the United States of America and a commander-in-chief of our military. And it's still, I mean, for many years in his first administration, it just, I would wake up in the morning and go, no, they didn't elect Donald Trump. And like, I don't do that anymore because, and that's kind of sad. And that's kind of sad. Edward says he hasn't launched any nukes, so that's the standard. He's not crazy until he launches nukes. And at that point, Edward will be dead like the rest of us. That's the standard. So we just wait. We will support him 100% until he launches the nukes. You know what happens when he launches the nukes? Edward will come and say, well, he had to. I mean, of course he had to. It's the tariffs. It's the Chinese. It's the elites. It's those immigrants. The immigrants forced him. He had no choice. He had to launch the nukes. What do you mean? It's all because of the immigrants. And the Supreme Court, I think, forced him to launch the nukes. It's all their fault. Edward, you should actually get some help. I really do think it's reached a point where you probably need some professional help. All right. Thank you, guys. That is the news. It took me a long time to cover that. That is the news on Monday, April 21st, 2025. It just gets more entertaining or more scary, however you want to view it, with time. Thanks you to all the super chatters. We'll get to the super chat in a minute. I want to, in the meantime, encourage those of you who maybe are not on live or maybe are live but don't use the super chat or the sticker features to support the show. You can go on patreon.com. Whenever you want. You don't have to use your iPhone for it. You can use a desktop computer, laptop, any way you want, iPad, and go to patreon.com and make a monthly contribution to Yaron Brook Show. I love those monthly contributions. They really help, and particularly if there are people out there who could do 100, 250, 500 a month, that is fantastic. But of course, I also incredibly value anybody who can do 2, 5, 10, 25. Any amount is good. But I'll remind those who can do more that, yeah, this show is only possible, only exists because of the support I get from you. I want to recognize Alex Epstein as a sponsor of this show, alexepstein.substack.com, the best mind, the best writer, the best provider of information, of talking points, of knowledge about what's going on with energy, with the grid, with climate change, with fossil fuels, and with a real insight into what's going on with this administration. So probably the person with the most insight, because he's connected to this administration in a way that at least he knows what's going on and has some some influence for the better within. Alex Epstein. So read him. You'll learn a lot, and you'll become a much better communicator. alexepstein.substack.com. And then the Ayn Rand Institute is offering a discount to Yaron Brook Show listeners for OCON. OCON is this amazing conference, 500 people like us in Boston over the 4th of July weekend, talking about ideas, hanging out, playing poker, listening to lectures. Just a great time. A great time is had by all. I will be there July 1st to 5th. We can organize a little get together of all the Yaron Brook Show fans, so that'll be on July. So you can register now and get a 10% discount, and you can do that by using this code. Here's the code: 25, representative of the year, 25. YBS, Yaron Brook Show, 10% discount. So all one word, no gaps, 25 YBS 10. And that's it. All right, let's jump in. Cool. All right, we'll start with the fact that Ali just gave me $500 to review this book by Evola. Called Tiger Book. I think I've already downloaded it and it's set for me to read. Of course, I've got all these other book reviews I have to do and others, so it might take a while, Ali, but I will get to it, I promise. God, I should really spend the next few months catching up on all these things. Rational IP. What role, if any, should government play in regulating personal data use by companies? How does Objectivism view privacy and EU laws like GDPR in a free market, especially with today's large-scale data collection and AI profiling? I mean, I think that's a great question, and it would be really interesting in a free market to see how that evolved, and I think it would ultimately evolve. Government's responsibility in this regard is to recognize that your data is yours. The personal information about yourself, but including any data that you choose to keep private is yours. Beyond that, the marketplace will determine privacy. So government should not regulate this other than to recognize that and protect that. Beyond that, it is all going to be dependent on terms of service. Now, let me be clear that in a laissez-faire capitalist economy, terms of service are not 30-page documents written in legalese that nobody reads because who the hell has the time? Terms of service would be simple, straightforward, in English, readable, understandable. And you would have to, and it would be your personal responsibility to read them and to agree to them. And different companies could have different terms of service. Some companies could say, look, your browsing data, we're going to use it anonymously, but we're going to use it and we can sell it. Other companies will say, your browsing data, we're going to give other companies all your data, including who you are and where you live. And other companies might say, we're not going to sell your browsing data. It's yours. You can sell it. Indeed, I think that's the business model that will be most interesting. You can sell it. We can help you sell it. We can aggregate it for you. But you have to take an actual step to sell it so that we as individuals now can benefit from the sale of our own data rather than the companies benefiting from the sale of our data. We as individuals benefit from the sale of the data. I think all those options would be on the table. And depending on what you as an individual wanted, what your preferences would be, would determine. I think the idea that we as individuals start selling our own data, own our own data, curate our own data, would be very appealing for a lot of us. I think some people would just be lazy and say, no, you can have my data, just do what you want with it. But people would have to take some responsibility over it. Take some responsibility of it. I don't think the government has much roles other than when a deal is violated. That's a violation of contract. And here's where the government violates these privacy laws, is the biggest violator. Today, if you consent to Google using your data, which we all consent to, right? We all sign these consent forms. But then once you've consented to that, the government can take that data. It's called the third-party doctrine, something like that. Amy Peikoff is an expert on this. So, no, that should not exist. If you consent to Google having the data, then you've consented to Google having the data, and Google maybe selling the data to whoever Google wants, but you don't consent to the government just stepping in and taking the data. At the end of the day, you own your data. You can decide who can use it and who can't, who you sell it to or who you don't. You get to decide. And then it's a question of how all that is arbitrated, how all that is arranged, and that's what the market is so good at doing. So that would be my best answer on that. So I'm against like GDPR and all of this other stuff. I want to create a robust market in data, but a robust market in data where individuals can, if they choose to, have much more say in both what data is used and what is not, and be compensated for it. Michael, as a business owner importer, if the Supreme Court throws out these tariffs and Trump still wants to enforce them unconstitutionally, I would not comply whatsoever. I would be willing to risk being arrested for that. Good. I think we need more of that. That's what we're going to need. Now, we'll see if it comes to that. It's going to be really interesting. This tariff lawsuits are going to be very, very interesting to see how they play out. Micah, I can't find an audiobook version of Ominous Parallels. Do you know if Leonard or ARI have any plans to put one out? You know, I don't. And for years, people have been complaining about that. And I'm not sure why it was never done or why Leonard never did that. I mean, it's under the control of Leonard, so he has complete control over that. But it's sad that it's never been done. That would be an amazing book to have out on audio. JB says, the measles have finally reached my state, Montana. Trump is dangerous. So is RFK. How do we combat his assault on conventional science and healthcare? I mean, I think the way to combat it is first through information and through speaking. This is what Ayn Rand told us. We have to speak up. We have to talk. And today with social media, speak. There's some really good people on social media reporting on evidence around the measles and around what's going on, and retweet them, share them, reinforce what they're saying. We've got to speak up, and social media gives us a tool to speak up and engage with lots of people beyond our circle of friends, associates, acquaintances. The other thing we have to do is we have to go out there and put pressure on our representatives, on Congress. These are the people who voted these bastards in. Senate could have voted down RFK. They voted him up. I mean, Cassidy today, Senator Cassidy, should be flooded with letters and emails and phone calls and whatever, shaming him for his vote to approve RFK. And we need to get very aggressive around this. This is where get organized or don't get organized. As an individual, just go and send a tweet, send a letter, send an email to Senator Cassidy. I'm sure you can get information from his office about it. And particularly if you're typically a Republican or have voted Republican in the past, let him know that you consider it a shameful thing that he did and a betrayal of his responsibility as a senator. Michael says, should the Supreme Court have more control over the military than the president? In the case he becomes tyrannical, the courts would have an enforcement mechanism to stop him. No, I don't think so. I mean, at the end of the day, the military is part of the executive branch. There's just no way around that. And the Supreme Court has no role other than to identify certain actions of the president, in this context, the commander-in-chief, as unconstitutional. But the reality is it's not enforceable, and the founders knew it was not enforceable. This is where the people come in. We get the government we deserve. We get the government we deserve. If we're not willing to hold our senators, congressmen, presidents accountable, then we will get authoritarianism. We will get a tyrant. That's just the reality of it. And the American people don't want to hold Trump accountable. It's very clear they don't. So as he moves towards being a tyrant, no institution is going to stop him. Now, I don't think Trump will be the tyrant, as I've said before. He's just softening up the world for the ultimate tyrant. Although we'll see. I mean, who knows? Michael, does Trump not realize a lot of his supporters are going to turn on him when their stock portfolios get hammered? I don't think he cares. And I think to some extent he enjoys their pain. There's certainly a little bit of a masochist in him, particularly the fact that a lot of people who are not his supporters are suffering. His supporters are poorer. Remember, his supporters are more the working class. They tend not to have portfolios in the marketplace. They'll lose their jobs, though. And at some point, he's going to have to care. Although, again, he is, he's probably not running again. So he doesn't have to please people. I mean, Congress is running again, I think. Jeffrey, thank you for the $20. He says, for your flight to Copenhagen. Jeffrey's invited me to join him to eat at the best restaurant in the world, supposedly, or of the list of the best restaurants in the world, one of the few I haven't eaten at, which is Noma in Copenhagen. He's actually scored tickets to Noma, and it's in early May, and I probably can't go, so, which is sad. Liam says, was Hitler gay? Was that why he hated himself? When he watches speeches, his mannerisms are effeminate. I don't know. I have no idea. How would I know that? And I don't know. Why are we looking for explanations? He hated himself. He was a product of a particular ideology. I mean, this strikes me as I don't get that. I don't know. I have no reason to believe so. He had a mistress. So I have no reason to believe that he was gay. And I don't see the relevance ultimately. Harper, if China invaded Taiwan, how long before Trump and MAGA side with China and remove all tariffs? I don't know. I don't know. But if China's ever contemplating to invade Taiwan, doing it now would be a great time. I mean, when the U.S. is in disarray, the Pentagon is in virtual meltdown, the president doesn't have a clue about what's going on, and yeah, I mean, now's not a bad time. I hope nobody from the Chinese government is listening to the show. James, is the Democrat Party of today more moderate and market-oriented than they were under FDR and LBJ? They're nutty with the social issues, but they haven't done any major welfare expansion since LBJ. Well, certainly the Democratic Party of Bill Clinton was very moderate on economic issues. The Democratic Party of Obama moved a little to the left on that, particularly with Obamacare. And Biden was a nothing. He moved more to the left, particularly with central planning, less redistribution, but more central planning, the CHIP Act, Inflation Reduction Act, other things. But no, on economic issues, generally the Democrats are pretty moderate. They're not horrific. They talk a big talk about taxes, but they never actually do it, not in a significant way. But I don't think they were, I don't think FDR and LBJ were leftists. Remember, in the time of LBJ, there was no welfare state. So they established one. I think all Democrats today would establish it if it was non-existent. It's now a question of expanding it, and there's no advantage to Democrats to expand it. They don't get extra votes for calling for the expansion of it. Now, also, it's not clear who the Democratic Party is. We'll see. If it's Bernie Sanders, then that's way to the left. If it's AOC, that's way to the left on economic issues. If it's Elizabeth Warren, that's way to the left on economic issues. So it's just like there is one Republican Party, but there's no one Democratic Party yet. We'll see who emerges as their leaders in the years to come. Paul, will the Republicans suffer in the midterms if the markets continue to decline? Yes. I think they will suffer a massive loss. Now, most of it will be in the House because I think in the Senate they're pretty protected. But they will take a real beating in the House of Representatives, in my view. Neil, if Canada raised tariffs on electricity, how would that increase prices on Canadians? How is that doubling down on taxes? I don't understand. Tariffs on electricity would mean electricity that came into Canada, they would tariff it. And that would mean electricity would cost more for Canadians. Now, if they started charging more for electricity that they ship to Americans, then it's not a tariff. A tariff is about stuff coming into your country. It's a tax on imports. So if Canadians import electricity from America, they might in some places, and they place a tariff on that, then Canadians pay higher prices on electricity. Clark, is there any way we can have a strong stock market, even with these stupid tariffs? Will markets be able to adjust and absorb? I mean, it's possible that some of it will get, but it'll take a while. It'll take a period of adjustment, and it'll adjust and absorb at a lower level. That is, without the tariffs, stocks will be higher than with the tariffs. But it's not clear how much the stock market going down, to what level does it need to go down in order to capture the effect of tariffs? I do think tariffs are very harmful. I do think that it's going to take a long time to adjust. But markets can adjust. They can find other suppliers than the Chinese. It also depends what Trump does, right? We've got a 3-month pause on the reciprocal tariffs. But if he goes back to those, we're in deep doo-doo. We are in deep trouble. Clark, is there a chance the Supreme Court will rule most of Trump's executive orders as unconstitutional within the first 6 months of his presidency? No, because they don't work that fast. They just don't work fast. They let their lower courts rule, and then the appellate courts rule, and only then do they rule. So it's going to take a lot longer than 6 months, sadly. Even if they rule the right way, it's going to be down the road. It's going to be after a while. Esoteric dichotomy. How long will it take to repair America's reputation globally? It feels supremely unfair this maniac can do so much lasting damage so fast. I don't see why it's unfair. I think it's very fair. This is who you people, some of you anyway, elected. This is who a majority of Americans wanted. That's how it works. That is fair. That is fair. So how long will it take to repair it? That depends on who's doing the repairing. It depends on what you offer as your strategy for repair. It depends on a lot of things. But as long as Trump is there, it's going to be hard to repair it. So we're looking at 4 years of bad stuff. Enric says, Jim Brown states that banks create money out of nothing when making loans. Do you find that to be true? And how does that relate to bank runs? No, I don't think it's true. I think banks are intermediaries. They don't have an unlimited ability to create money. They can create money as long as they have deposits, as long as they get deposits. Now, it's true that when they make a loan, the lender deposits the money in the bank, but there's a limit to how many loans they can make, which is ultimately limited by how many deposits they can get. So there are all kinds of ratios that banks are held to in the number of loans that they can make. So banks cannot make unlimited amounts of loans. They're capped, and ultimately, the cap is the equivalent of the equivalent of what would happen with fractional reserve banking. So, yeah, I mean, banks do create money, if you want to call it money, using fractional reserves. But it's not out of thin air. It's what we've always known, how banks create money. It's not new. Now, the idea is that it's divorced from deposits. It's divorced from the intermediation that is done through the depository institutions. You put money in, the bank takes 90% of it and loans it out. The argument is here now, they don't have to have deposits. They create the deposits through the loans. And that's true up to a point. It's limited by the various regulations that limit how much loans they can make, how much capital they have to have, how many deposits they have to have. They're limited by a bunch of regulations and ratios. But it is a view now held pretty commonly among libertarians. It's a view that was presented for the first time really in this form in a paper written by a couple of economists at the Bank of England a few years ago. Shazbot says, a reminder that Andor Season 2 starts tomorrow. I saw that. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Shazbot. Rajiv, please explain what will be the consequences if Iran develops a nuclear bomb, which is highly likely considering Trump administration's cowardly negotiations. I mean, I don't know if it's highly likely. I mean, we've been thinking it's highly likely for 20 years now, so I don't know if it will actually happen. There's a sense in which the Iranians are afraid. But the main thing that'll happen if they get the bomb is now nobody can do anything nobody can deal with them. That is, they can now spread terrorism. They can get their proxies to bomb anybody, to kill anybody, to blow up anything. And what are you going to do about it? You're not going to invade Iran. They have a bomb. You're not going to bomb Iran because they have a bomb. And they're going to threaten to use that bomb. So it's basically going to serve as this massive deterrent against actually taking action against Iranian initiation of force, Iranian hostility. It'll force the world to tolerate whatever Iran wants to do. And that would be a disaster. And of course, if it uses a bomb, there's a good likelihood it uses it against Israel. And one significant bomb basically wipes out Israel. Israel's a tiny little place. Fender Hopper says, it's getting harder to sell people in the Serenity Prayer as it applies to politics these days. Less of the people I deal with in life are pursuing happiness in favor of focusing on political despair. Yeah, and most of them deserve it because most of them voted for this guy. So they deserve it. So, yeah, if you voted for Trump, you deserve to be mired in political despair. But it is hard because politics is in all of our lives. It basically affects our lives in ever-growing ways, and it's hard to ignore it. Gamang says, with your accent, I always hear Iran as Yaron. So I heard the question as, what would happen if Iran developed a nuclear bomb, which is highly likely? I mean, good things would happen if I had a nuclear bomb. I mean, good things. I would immediately declare Puerto Rico as an independent country. I would become dictator of Puerto Rico and turn it into a laissez-faire heaven. I would turn it into the Hong Kong of the Caribbean, and have that bomb basically targeted at Washington, D.C., and nobody would touch me. Nobody could touch me. I'd then, of course, cede the governing of Hong Kong. Who the hell wants to govern this place? To whoever wants to a constitutional republic after we wrote a proper constitution, and but you basically turn, Puerto Rico into Hong Kong of the Caribbean. This would be a great place. You guys would all move here because it would be so cool, so cool. So, yeah, if anybody has a bomb to spare, send one over to me. Catherine says, I would like to purchase Yaron Brook Show mugs at the shop that is linked here on YouTube. How do you get the 10% discount for members? Is it enough for a member on YouTube and a regular listener? I think so, but I have no idea how my shop works. So can you email that question to me? And I'll send it to my assistant and she can tell you. So Yaron at yaronbrookshow.com. Yaron at yaronbrookshow.com. And you just email me that question and we'll answer it. Edward says, how safe is Puerto Rico? I mean, if I have a nuke, it's unbelievably safe. It's like the safest place anywhere. It's so safe, because most violence is the result of the drug trade, and I would make drugs legal. I like numbers. You said everyone at ARI agrees with you on Trump, basically. Does that include Adam Mossoff? Well, I mean, Adam Mossoff is not at ARI, right? I didn't say all objectivists agree with me. I said everybody at ARI. Adam is not at ARI. He's a George Mason. But, that's a good question. It'd be interesting. But let's put it this way. I think Adam had one issue, which was Israel. And that was the issue he went on. But Adam, I think, is surprised at how, and I'm speaking for Adam, and I do not know if this is his belief, but this is just my projection, knowing Adam. I think Adam is shocked at how bad Trump is on every other issue. And he's still holding out to the hope that Trump will be good on Israel. And so far, he's been okay on Israel. But he's still holding up to that hope. But I'm sure that Adam agrees with my critique of tariffs. Adam knows how bad tariffs are. And of some of the abuses with regard to immigration and free speech and all this other stuff. Now, whether he still thinks it's worth it to have Trump because of the Israel thing, I don't know. We'd have to ask Adam. And maybe his position is more nuanced than that, so I don't know. Does it include Alex Epstein? You'll have to ask Alex. But Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the Yaron Brook show. Does that tell you anything? Daniel, sometimes I think the right suffers more from a complete lack of knowledge than a lack of critical thinking, though the two are related. They have zero knowledge in anything. What do you say? I mean, yeah, but that's, I think you can't divorce those two. That is, they know nothing, therefore they can't think, and they can't think, therefore they know nothing. That is, the two are related. They are products of the American educational system. They're products of the John Dewey system of unthinking, of destroying a capacity to conceptualize, and part of the unthinking methodology. Part of the unthinking methodology is that they don't know anything, that they're not taught anything. And that they even accept the postmodern view that there is no thing to know. There is no absolute knowledge. I like number says, Alex referred to Trump as the president. I do too. He is the president. That's pretty much a fact. I do not deny that Trump is the president. Quite the contrary. I tell you that some of you deserve to suffer the consequences of the president because you voted for him, particularly if you voted for him in the primary. If you voted for him in the Republican primary, you deserve everything you're getting in spades. Neo, please start linking your sources, articles you mentioned in the video description. It's a simple copy and paste of links, hopefully. It's never that simple. But, all right, I'll try. Ollie W., do you think freedom of speech is being restricted within the UK, Europe? Yes, very much so. I mean, hate speech laws are prevalent in the UK. They're prevalent in mainland Europe and have been for a very long time. There are, the lack of proper defense of Charlie Hebdo, the lack of proper defense of the Danish cartoons have led to a chilling effect where people don't speak up the truth because they're afraid. There's absolutely significant restrictions on free speech, and I've been talking about this at least since the Danish cartoon issue. And and the Institute has been talking about this from the perspective of free speech in Europe, at least since the Salman Rushdie issue in 1989. So we've been talking about this for a very, very long time. A very long time. By the way, if you want a specific question to be asked of Ankar Gate, Super Chat will be open tonight. You can ask him. There's a bunch of questions you guys on philosophy that you guys are eager to ask, come over and ask Anka. You know how it works? It's not about what you say in the chat. It's what you put your money where your mouth is. It's by doing a super chat. You don't want to do a super chat, you don't really want an answer to the question. So, because everybody can afford a super chat, right? We do them at $2. Everybody can afford a super chat. So if you're not asking, don't expect an answer. Michael, is the Democrat Party our only hope? God help us. I don't know what our hope is. Democrats are going to be the only alternative. I don't know that they're our only hope. I wouldn't place our hope in politicians. We have to place our hope in the people. And we have to continue to argue and educate the people. Roland says, you're on for Emperor of Puerto Rico. I don't think the Puerto Ricans will like it. I don't speak Spanish. It's the biggest thing holding me back from being Emperor of Puerto Rico is no Spanish. Nate, name your 3 favorite cuisines by country. I don't know what that, I don't know how to do that. I sent $10 earlier, but forgot to add the question. I mean, I like particular restaurants. It's not cuisines that I like. I like particular restaurants. I like good food. I like great restaurants. I ate at a phenomenal Mexican restaurant in London. Really a 1-star Michelin restaurant, and it was phenomenal. One of the best restaurants, Mexican restaurants I've ever eaten at. I've eaten at, some of my favorite food in London is West African. The 2, fantastic West African restaurants in London. I don't eat a lot of Italian food, primarily because I don't eat pasta, but there are great Italian restaurants, so I like restaurants in Spain. Do they do Spanish food? Not traditional Spanish food. They do a certain type of Spanish food that I like. So I love Asian food generally, all of it. Japanese food, Thai food, Indonesian food, Vietnamese food, Chinese food, Korean food. All of it's good because they emphasize flavor, a lot of flavor. I like flavor. So, I like French food. I don't like British food, if there is such a thing. But I guess I don't think of it in terms of cuisines I like. I think of it in terms of restaurants and types of restaurants that I like. Subcask, the right recognizes and endorses inequality and hierarchy. However, they believe that it is fixed and deterministic. This is the contrast with meritocratic individualistic view of inequality and the hierarchy of liberalism. Yes, I think it's the right and the left are very similar. They're very collectivistic in every respect. One respect they're different is that the left tends to be egalitarian and the right tends to be hierarchical, but the hierarchy is fixed, deterministic, and often imposed. So, it would be, that is a big part of it. I don't like meritocratic. I don't like that term. I don't like that word. It's not like we rank people on merit and we give them stuff based on how meritocratic they are. I believe in freedom. Not in somebody judging other people's merit and determining from above what is good and what is not. Meritocratic sounds too bureaucratic. It's too ocratic. What I believe in is not cratic. It's freedom. So I'm not a fan of meritocracy. I'm a fan of hierarchy, of ability determined by the market. I don't know if that's merit or not. Determined by the market. Neo, have you had a chance to look into the Canadian debates lately? Any opinion on Carney or Pierre? Oh, Pierre. Pierre has been good. I've heard speeches of his. He's usually good. He's definitely better than Carney. Carney is a nobody and a nothing. Carney's a real Keynesian. Not good. Carney's not good. Don't vote for Carney if you live in Canada. Who would you pick as VP in Puerto Rico? I mean, I'm tempted to say Peter Schiff, but I'd probably need somebody who spoke Spanish. I'd have to think about maybe the guy who runs the free market think tank here in Puerto Rico, who's local Puerto Rican. I'd probably pick him. Roland, you can speak Spanish, but you've had to wear a tie. You'd have to wear a tie as the emperor, which is clearly a deal breaker. Yeah. I can learn Spanish, but I can't wear a tie. That's true. So, yes, I'm not going to be dictator of Puerto Rico because I'm not going to wear a tie. Not going to wear a tie. Peter Schiff is in Puerto Rico. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks to all the super chatters. Thanks particularly to Ali for coming forward with the book review. And thank you to Rational IP for the 60 euro question. And to everybody else who asked questions. We did really well today. So I appreciate all of you. Appreciate all of that. What else do I want to say? That's it. We're good. I will see you all tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Tonight. Tonight and tomorrow. Tonight, in like less than 4 hours, I will see you here with Encore. Don't miss it. It's going to be a great show. And then I'll see you again at tomorrow for more news-related stuff.